Welcome to Cars on Call. I am automotive journalist Steve Schutz. I talk about this is new generation car chronicles 2. So appearing with me is noted car enthusiast Karl Schutz, also known as my son.
Nice to meet you. It's good to be here.
Andy Choi is back. Andy works for Sonic Automotive, and he's currently at their Stevens Creek BMW store. But he's working his way up in a management trainee program. Both these guys, they've known each other since elementary school, and Andy's always been a car guy, and Carl's a new car guy. We're going to talk about that. I'm going to talk a little bit later. I got a press car down in Orange County, which is different. I want to talk just briefly about that. But we're also going to talk about, Andy, I want to go back with you and talk about, in just a little bit more detail, your time at the BMW store. I want to hear about younger buyers, younger enthusiasts, and maybe some funny customer stories or interesting customer stories that stand out for you. And then there's a little bit of bring a trailer, interesting stuff I want to get into, but we'll just kind of let this roll. Guys, you guys have known each other a long time. Andy, you've always been a car guy. Carl, you're new. Carl, talk about, again, as your father, I've always wanted you to be a car guy, and now you kind of are. Bring us up to speed.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've still got a long way to go compared to you guys, but I think for me, I've always been around cars, obviously, with you as my dad, so I learned a lot just through osmosis.
Despite, despite what you wanted, yeah.
But I still didn't really know much about what was going on. Like, I think Andy, you still give me heartburn about like never driving his really nice BMW that he had. I don't think I ever drove that, but obviously it was nice to see the auction results recently. And yeah, I mean, I think for me, I never really needed a car like living in the different places I lived. So it wasn't until I moved to California that I really needed a car. And I think that's where it became a little bit fun because I could call you up and we could talk about like what would be the ideal car to get.
Actually, let's take a moment there. You lived for 5 years in Lower Manhattan. That's the worst place to own a car.
Yeah, never owned a car there. Just like the subway. But yeah, it's I think for me, I think when we were talking about what kind of car to get, I think it was very obvious, like, why not? I want to get something used because I feel like new cars, sorry, Andy, but new cars unfortunately can be somewhat like cost prohibitive. Like it's like you're paying that premium. And for me as a first time car buyer, I didn't necessarily feel that need. I definitely think as I continue to make more money, that's definitely in my future. But for my first car, it was more of like, how can I be really pragmatic? And actually, my first car was free when I moved to California, and it was a two-seater.
Not an enthusiast car.
Yeah, it was actually, I think, more or less the same year as my current Porsche, but it was a smart car for two. So, actually very fun to drive and actually really good for street parking, which is what I had in my apartment here for the first couple of years. But when I was looking to get a more serious car, it was the consideration was like, okay, I don't want to buy new. I'll probably be buying, used, and what can I get at a certain price point? And I think, obviously it'd be phenomenal to have a Porsche. I just didn't really know how to navigate that market at all, and I think that's where you came in and you really helped steer me to the right model, like right away. You pretty much knew right away that it was going to be 997, right?
Yeah, the 996 generation, which is 1999 to 2004, Porsche was in big trouble. And the best 911, which is the 993, that was from, I think, 94. It's called the 993 because it was launched in 1993, but they launched the model year 1994 until 1998. And they lost a lot of money. They were great cars, but they overbuilt them. There was too much there, too much content, and they weren't making money. So they said, we're going to lower the price dramatically, and we're going to make a water-cooled car so we can have more power. It's easier to build, cheaper to build, and we can make this new generation. It is going to be we can pair it with a Boxster, which is a cheaper car, and we're going to sell a lot more of these because the price point will be lower, and we're spreading the development cost over two models. And that's exactly what happened. Andy, you remember this. The 996 generation was extremely popular. Problem is, they pull so much content out of it. The interior was too cheap, and they had a lot of quality problems, and they had to fix that. So they fixed it with the 997. Also, the design of the 996 just looked kind of goofy. So I'll just very quickly catch people up. I wanted to take an East Coast trip last year, and I bought a 997 because I thought it's cheaper than shipping my car and shipping it back. I'll buy 997, I'll drive it, and I'll sell it for what I bought it for. And unfortunately, or fortunately, my son fell in love with it and he said, I'll take it. I'll be the buyer. So I ended up losing money because he got a family discount. But I guess it was already pre-digested. I decided this was the car to get. It was definitely affordable, but still good quality and a great driver. And so you knew for me it was going to be good. And it's been good.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't want the what's it called? Like the fried eggs on the 996.
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't want that because that probably would have been the cheapest option, or maybe a used Boxster, or like is it the Cayman that we saw today?
Yeah.
Like, but those are kind of ugly in my opinion. So I wanted something more like classic. And yeah, I mean, I got really lucky. I feel like I got in on that generation right before it really took off. But yeah, it's been really nice to have.
But you definitely stepped. I'll say this, Carl. You could have just said, "I'm going to get a Camry," and I bought the car. It was in Atlanta. Actually, your brother Patrick had it in his apartment building, so if it was safe, and he would drive it once a week until we ended up taking it up the coast. But I was going to drive it and then sell it to somebody else. But you just stepped up and you said, "I want that."
Yeah, well, I think we were kind of talking about like we kind of knew that whatever Porsche you were gonna get, I would have first dibs on. So,
Yeah.
it was kind of felt like a joint search, although obviously you were doing all the searching, but it felt like, that was gonna be the car that I get. But yeah, I mean, we were playing around with different configurations. I think we were talking about maybe getting a convertible at some point because I'm in California. But yeah, I mean, it came together really nicely. I mean, I think the intuition there of like I could buy a Camry or a Porsche. I think it's like pretty obvious that I'd get a Porsche, right?
It's not obvious to everybody. Some people would say just get a Camry. This is kind of a funny story. Andy, you haven't heard this. I had my feelers out, and a friend of mine said, "Hey, Dick Barber, who is the famous Dick Barber Racing, who had a very successful Porsche racing team in the '70s into the '80s. He's been on the show, and he knew I was looking, and literally he." Emailed me and said, I have a car you might be interested in. And I said, he said, can I call you? I said, yeah. So Carl and I were together, and all of a sudden the phone rang. I said, I think this is Dick Barber. And it was Dick Barber. So Carl was there when I got the call saying it's Guards Red on tan. And he said this. He said, Steve, this is a really good car. And he gave me the price. I said, okay. And I just, no inspection, no nothing. I trusted Dick Barber and he was trustworthy. And I said, what's the price? He gave me a price. I said, okay, I'll send you a check. I sent him a check. It was in Atlanta. Patrick was there at the time. Patrick drove up and got it. So it was kind of like serendipity that, again, Carl was there when I got the call.
Yeah, we were in Seattle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Choi, do you remember where you were when I said I was going to get a Porsche?
That's a good question. I think I was somewhere. Was
Or
I
what was
somewhere?
your reaction? What was your
For me,
reaction?
for me, yeah. I think I was either at work or I was at home. And I just remember I got a call from you, Carl, and you said, "Hey, what do you think about 997?" I said, "Hey, fantastic car. Like who would ever turn down 997?" But I said, "What's going on?" Right? And I just remember you said, "Oh, I might be buying a 997," or like, and I said, "Oh, that's cool." And I remember when you first mentioned it, like it was. Like you were excited, but you're like, hey, I'm not sure if that's like should be kind of like the right car. Like you should be buying, in a way from a practicality perspective. And I know your wife Krista, she was supportive of you getting a sports car, but she was like, yeah, it's a manual. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Because the thing is, she wanted to share. I would say that she wanted to drive the car here and there too, right? She does not drive a manual, and in your case,
Yeah.
you were, I would say, hell bent on okay, if I'm getting a fun sports car, it's gonna be a manual. Like I'm not going to get anything other than the manual. But I
Yeah.
just remember having that conversation, and then a couple months later, like you called and said, "Yeah, I'm going to buy the 97. I'm going to buy the 997 this summer." And then I was like, "Wow, that's crazy. That's I get it's real. And it was cool to see how you've enjoyed the car so far, and it's cool, Carl. Like you've turned the true enthusiast where you take care of the car, you're very proud of the car, but at the same time you drive it, you enjoy it, you know how to enjoy it, right? Especially on those back roads in LA, and it's been really cool to see that.
Yeah.
By the way,
Uh-huh.
even though
Uh-huh.
none of my three sons are really into cars, I
Uh-huh.
really wanted them to know how to drive a stick shift. I thought it was very
Mhm.
important that they know that. I wanted them to know how to drive a stick shift and how to change a tire.
Mhm.
So they all learned that. And Carl
I
and
don't
I,
think I know how to change a tire,
I
but
taught
I
you.
do know how to drive stick.
Yeah, we had an Audi A4, and Carl learned on that Audi A4.
But don't worry, I'm a AAA member, so if I need a tire change, I'll just call them up. Yeah, the Audi was really fun to drive. That was really fun. Definitely stalled it a few times. Although I think when Andy tried to drive it, he also stalled it. So I still don't know if
That's
Andy knows how to drive a stick shift.
no, not as good as you, Carl, but you've become a pro. But
So
it's
it's great. Of course, we all know it's a great it's a great anti-theft device. There was a carjacking in Maryland just a few days ago. A restaurant owner who had a Porsche Cayman was carjacked, and he got to save his car because the thieves didn't know how to drive a stick. So Carl knows how to drive a stick. I know you know how to drive a stick, Andy. So it's kind of cool. Well, anyway, we're welcome to the car world, Carl, and Carl's in business and he's in tech sales. So, Andy, I want to shift gears and talk about your business. Last week we talked about, or last episode, we talked about a lot of the dealership stuff, but we didn't really get into some details about, unusual customer experiences or that kind of thing. And I want to get into that just because, again, you're in sales and Carl's in sales. And I guarantee you guys both have really interesting stories. So Andy, start with you. And I want to hear some Carl stories too.
sure, absolutely. Well, Dr. Schutz, great to see you and Carl today, and thanks again for having me on the show. It was a blast last time, and yeah, I was really looking forward to joining you again this week. But yeah, just a quick stories about some fun customer interactions. I think for me, I know when it comes to a lot of younger enthusiasts. Well, you mentioned this. It's always cool to see. Always cool to see younger enthusiasts or people that got into cars a little bit later in life. So people like Carl who had a revelation when it comes to fun cars, and I've had a customer come in. They were looking for a sports car, like as a younger enthusiast, and he said for most of his life, he had no interest in cars, right? Like he didn't know what an M4 was until a couple months back, but then his business did pretty well, and he wanted to kind of reward himself, and he was researching around, and he said a lot of people recommending the M4 on a
Mm.
lot of the social media platforms, right? And he saw a lot of reviews on YouTube and whatnot, and he wanted to come and check it out, and he took it for a drive and absolutely loved it. And he ended up getting an individual order for him. He got a Java Green M4, and yeah,
Nice
loves
color.
it. Yeah, and loves it. But for me, it's been cool to see. Those have
Do you
been
think
the
that was the right car? Like, would you have recommended him get an M3 or something else, or why the
uh,
M4?
for him. I think he just wanted a two door. He wanted a two-door sports car, and the car just fit his needs. It was comfortable enough to daily drive, but then it was fast enough for him to enjoy. And I think it was very kind of like your 997 for him. It was a perfect car for him to enter into the car world. So that's been cool to see. And I know Doctor.
Andy,
Yeah.
as a newbie who's
Yes.
not really into cars,
Uh-huh.
we've all seen the videos of M3s and M4s crashing, leaving
Yes.
cars in coffee. Did you
Yes.
have to warn him?
We did tell them to be careful. We did tell them to be careful, and especially with the M3s, M4s, like if you get the extra. So one of the things is you can turn off. You can put it in rear-wheel drive mode, right? But then if you switch into the rear-wheel drive mode, it turns off all the traction controls and all the traction control. So what you have to do is go back into your menu and then and then manually switch it back on, right? So
Mm.
that's something that we do tell people. But I think at the end of the day, it's have to be careful. And like you said, the G80 M3s. I'm not sure what kind of witchcraft engineering BMW did to these cars, but They are very quick. They are fun. They're very quick, but it is a bit easy to put it into the wall or into the curb if you're not careful with it. So, but I think just having self control and just letting people know and give them some time to get used to the car right before they start really pushing it. And I think that's I would say that's the best advice, best advice I can provide to the customers. Right. But like the most of the owners, they seem to really love it. Those are very, very hot cars. So M4s, M3s are a lot higher in demand than M4s. I'm not really sure exactly why. Maybe that heritage behind the nameplate of the M3 as well as the practicality of a four-door. So I know with the M3s, anytime we get any and they fly off the lot, I think right now we have 6 or 7 customers on the wait list for the M3. So it takes about 6 to 8 months to get their M3 if they can,
Wow.
if they get a build sheet in, stuff like that. So but yeah, just overall, they've been great cars. And just to follow up, Dr. Schutz, about some fun stories about customers, I would love to hear some of Carl's as well, because I'm sure, Carl, you've had a lot of very interesting customer stories also. For me, the one that I would all remember is, yeah, Dr. Schutz, I know we briefly spoke last week as well, but yeah, for me, 99% of customers I've interacted with, they've been great. They've been professional, they've been very courteous, they've been mindful. But then, once in a while, you do get those interesting customers. The one that I would always remember is when I was doing a rotation over at the loaner desk. I remember a customer came in after dropping his car off in service, and he's getting a loaner car. And the first thing he said was, "Hey, I'm an SVP of a $13 billion company here in Silicon Valley. Like, I don't have a lot of time. You guys got to get me into a car." And we said, "Okay, sir. Well, can we see your driver's license and proof of insurance?" And we asked for his driver's license. He's like, "No, I don't have it with me." And we're like, "Okay, it's fine." And we try to understanding with customers. We asked him for a photo of the driver's license, and he searched through, and he's like, "No, I don't have it." And he goes, "I don't have time for this." So we said, "Okay, then what about proof of insurance? Can you show us, your insurance card that's in your glove box? Just anything, right? It could be in your glove box, it could be in your app on your phone, or a picture of it." Because, like I said, we try to be very understanding with customers, and he's like, "No, I don't have." He's like, "I can't find it. Like, I don't have time for this." And he goes, "Okay, you know what? Like, I know your GM here, and what are your names? Give me your names. I'm just gonna pull my car back out, and I'm just gonna report you guys." And yeah,
Jeez.
so it's this customer, and I was kind of
Jeez.
thinking, like, okay, that's interesting. How do we handle this kind of a situation, right? It's almost like, for loaner cars, you're getting a free rental car essentially, like a courtesy car. But I mean, you can't take a rental car without a driver's license or insurance. And for us, we try to understanding. So we're like, hey, like any form of like any like a photo of it, like we'll take a photo of it for today just to help them out.
Yeah.
But he threw a big fit about it, and but later on, he calmed down. He came back and apologized, and he was able to call his wife and get his information for him, and he got into a car. So that was a
Sweet.
customer that I'll always remember. And there was another customer. So she came in. She brought in the BMW XM. So that M big SUV, that $180,000 SUV, and she came in and we asked for her proof of insurance, and she was like, "Oh yeah, I can't find it." And she goes, "It's in the truck." And we said, "Okay." So I went out there. I had to locate her car in the lot, and we have about 300 or so cars in the back lot. I had to go locate her car,
Mm.
go grab her insurance, come back. And now she was very angry that she's running 10 minutes behind when she didn't bring her insurance, when she was told by the service advisor to bring her insurance. And she was also throwing a big fit, like, "I really got to go," like this and that, just making a big scene. And we got her situated. It's okay, right? Those cases, you have to follow the protocol. Just tell, "Hey, sorry about that, but we do have to follow the protocol. Thanks for your understanding." And we got her to a loaner car, and she was huffing and puffing and got out of there. But the funniest thing about that was, again, I don't know who she is, right? Like, she could be some big Silicon Valley mogul. Like, I'm not sure, right? But then I remember this customer that was waiting behind her. He brought a Z8, and he brought a BMW Z8. Right? He brought in a Z8 for servicing, and he was a very private person, a very nice guy, very nice gentleman. Brought a
The
Z8 in.
Z8, just for people who don't know, Z8 is a very, very special
Mhm.
sports car based on the V8 M5 of the early 2000s, around 2001, 2002. So they made a sports car that was retro, and
Mhm.
it's worth 200 to 300,000 today. Back then, it was probably 150 new. a very
Mhm.
valuable, very special car.
Hmm.
Absolutely. It's a very beautiful car. We all looked at it, and he was very nice, right? He let us look around the car, and he just said, "Hey, like, only thing was he was like, hey, I'm a very private person, so he was like, hey, you guys can show the pictures of the cars to your friends, like just don't post it on Instagram or anything like that, right?" We're like, yeah, no problem. And turns out, he was a big car collector. He bought the car new back in was it 2004, 2003, 2004 when it first came out,
Around
Wow.
then.
and spot it new, and he had about 35 supercars. He has 35 supercars. He said his favorite car was a Carrera GT, right? He showed us pictures of it, and his second
Wow.
favorite was a SLR McLaren. But it was really funny because but he showed us his cars. He's a very nice guy, and he showed up in a Z8 and Adidas track pants and like a stained white T-shirt, right, and sneakers. Like you would never know what this guy was. And later on, like we found out that he was a big Silicon Valley mogul. He founded a very successful company that he sold to a big tech firm for billions of dollars, and he's enjoying his life with his supercar hobby. But it was funny, he was
Wow.
a very nice guy, right? Very down to earth guy. He was taking his time to show us his cars, and he was waiting in line. He was waiting in line with all the rest of the customers. It's like literally like a Silicon Valley billionaire, right? Just waiting in line with just
Isn't
waiting for
it
a
true
turn to
though,
get his
Andy?
car.
The
And
people that say I'm a big shot are usually not a big shot, and the
uh,
true big shots are usually very understated and quiet.
yeah, I think so. I think so too. Right.
So Troy, do you have younger customers walking up to the lot interested in
So,
cars, and like what are they
yeah,
like?
yeah, that's a good question, Carl. So that was what I was going to transition into. So the big thing about younger customers, Dr. Schutz out of US spotted too. I think for them, so they are very tech savvy in a way that they do a lot of their, they like to do a lot of their car shopping, their research car shopping, virtually, right? So they do prefer to do virtually. So they leverage all the platforms. So not only our websites, but also Car Gurus and Auto Trader. So they utilize the platforms to search the best car for them, right? See what kind of prices that they should be paying. Yeah, and then they'll go ahead and they know exactly what they want most of the time, or they have a good idea of what they're looking for before they make an appointment to come into the dealership to look at the cars. And also with the younger people too, it was interesting because for them, like they are also a bit more open to, I would say, just finalizing deals virtually. So a lot of them, like they know what they want, right? They'll just buy. They want to just take care of all the documentation, everything ahead of time, and all they want to do is just come in at the end, sign a couple papers, and just get out of the dealership, right? So, and then also a lot of out of state buyers as well. And with a lot of younger people, it seems like for them they're not as apprehensive about buying cars sight unseen. So for them, it's if as long as it's a reputable dealership, the car's represented. And I've had a lot of customers, a lot more than I've expected. So they would just ask for pictures of the car or the walk around video, and we'll send them all the reports related to the cars, and they'll be like, okay, like let's make a deal, like let's go ahead and proceed with the purchase. And yeah,
What should they be apprehensive about buying sight unseen?
so it's interesting because I think traditionally, most people like I think it's like, hey, don't you want to look at the car first, like drive the car first before you buy it? But then a lot of times they're like, hey, I've driven a similar car, or I own a previous generation 3 Series, right? Or like I've driven X7, I know what it is, right? Like I know what it feels like. I'm just now looking for like a good deal on this car. Or if you're looking for a sports car, right? For a lot of times, if they're looking for a specific spec or a specific car, yeah. So if they're like, yeah, I want a manual M3, like I know how the car drives, like you guys have one in the spec I want, okay, let's make a deal on this car, right? Or I had a customer from Florida, they bought a Shelby GT 350R, so last week, and same thing. So we put the car up right when it came in on trade. It still had a stock photo. Customer called, and he was like, "Hey, can you send me a couple photos?" And I happened to have some photos of the car I took when it came on trade in because I love this car. And he was like, "Oh, it looks good. Let's buy it." So, and it's surprising. It's surprising, right? Because for me, like I would prefer to look at the car and drive it in person before purchasing it. But I feel like with a lot of younger buyers, yeah, they're not. I think for them, like we grew up in the e-commerce era, or a lot of them are very familiar with e-commerce. I would say like the way that's how they just do their shopping. And it's just been interesting to see how they are able to utilize, I would say, to utilize technology to their advantage to be able to do their research, do their due diligence, but then also purchase cars that way. So
Our
yeah,
trauma surgeon co-host who's away this week,
uh-huh,
Stephan Moran, he talks about the Teslification of car sales, and I think that's right.
uh-huh,
You can buy a Tesla on your phone, you do everything on the phone, and then
mm-hmm,
the car shows up. People
mm-hmm,
like that. It's very appealing.
it is,
Yeah, I
it
mean,
is.
to be honest, I didn't even know that there was like regulatory capture around selling cars where like in many states it's illegal to sell a car directly to a consumer.
All states.
Hmm.
In all states, yeah. I mean, I was honestly
Hmm.
pretty shocked when I found out about that. Obviously, I mean, Joy, I'm sure you can speak to the benefits of having that, right? Where you can make sure the cars have a place to get service and stuff like that. But like,
Hmm.
honestly, that's baffling to me that you couldn't buy a car directly from a manufacturer.
Hmm.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I've been very much in favor of having the option to buy it directly from the manufacturer, but the
Hmm.
dealers are very, very successful in lobbying to keep that regulatory capture. What they
Hmm.
do is they go to the legislator and say, hey, if the dealers go away, guess what? And by the way, in every community,
Hmm.
the biggest generator, except in rare circumstances, the biggest generator of sales tax money are car
Hmm.
dealers.
Hmm.
So you get all those car dealers together, they go up and say, hey, you know all this sales tax money you're getting? Many, many millions, maybe billions of dollars, depending on the area. You know all that
Hmm.
you know you enjoy it? It's probably going to go away if you do away with the dealer.
Hmm.
And I think it's not a great argument. It's probably false, but it's a very potent argument because again, if the biggest payer of a certain tax comes to you and you're a politician, you're going to
Uh-huh.
listen.
Hmm.
One argument I would say in favor is if there's let's take the Apple Store.
Hmm.
If you buy from an Apple Store is owned by Apple, okay? As opposed to if there's an Apple dealer that's a franchise dealer. So if you buy it from a franchise dealer, the owner of the dealer lives locally. All the employees live locally, but mostly the owner and the profit stays local. The Apple Store is not going to sponsor a little league team. The Apple Store is
Hmm.
not going to put money back into the local economy. All of the profit from an Apple Store goes to Cupertino.
Hmm.
In your store, your owner, whoever owns your
Hmm.
store, he's going to spend that profit locally. That's a pretty good argument in my opinion.
Hmm. Absolutely. No, that's a really good point, and I think it's very interesting because the way the car dealership model in the U.S. looks like how it came about, and Dr. Schutz, you know a lot about it. Maybe, yeah, you know a lot more than I do. So correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is, back in the 50s and 60s, the law was passed to in a way to support small businesses. Is that right? So
Yes.
it's I know it's supposed to be like a win-win for manufacturers and dealerships. So yeah, back then it's almost everybody was a small time kind of like a local dealer, right? Deal with just franchise from Ford or Chevy, and you have a small
It's also
storefront
to
lot,
support
right?
to support big
Mhm.
business. For
That's it.
example,
Uh huh.
Coca-Cola,
Uh huh.
Coca-Cola, they decided decades ago that
Hmm.
what they're going to do is they're going to franchise essentially to the
Hmm.
bottler. And then what they do is the bottler is a small business person here, there, everywhere. The
Hmm.
bottler takes the bottler has to pay for all that stuff himself. A
Hmm.
bottling plant, he's got to buy the bottles, he's got to buy the syrup and stuff from Coca-Cola.
Hmm.
Bottler has to take on that financial risk.
Hmm.
If Coca-Cola had to go build bottling factories around the country, it would have
Hmm.
taken forever for them to go national. And I think,
Hmm.
and Coca-Cola was earlier than the car thing. And I think the car manufacturers looked at Coke and said, we want something like that. So
Hmm.
somebody else is paying the money that otherwise they would have had to pay.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think it's a very similar business model, right? So where in a way so you have the local, I'll say local franchisees or franchise owners. So they're responsible for all the servicing, all the costs associated with that, and in a sense, and then in a sense, the manufacturers they do get exposure to different parts of the country, right? And then and these franchise owners, like they would be the ones who are responsible for, like you said, right? Just like acquiring the inventory from the manufacturers, setting up the service, setting up all the logistics and everything, right? When it comes to servicing the cars and the inventory and all that. But so in the beginning, for my understanding is they were all small businesses, but then as time passed with acquisitions and mergers and
Consolidation.
consolidation exactly. So all the big players they just bought up they just really bought up all the dealerships and now it's just controlled by the corporate conglomerates nowadays. But it's
It
interesting,
seems like
right?
there's a pretty healthy e-commerce business for used cars. Like I know, Dad,
Yes.
you're always sending me like bring a trailer listings and stuff, and like seems like the online community keeps the prices pretty like fair. Like they're always assessing like the value of these cars. So maybe you're not seeing the car in person, but you get all these commentators who pick up on the smallest things.
Uh-huh.
and they can post publicly, and that seems like a really healthy community. And I mean, you bought two cars sight unseen, right? And
Mhm.
even for me, like there's this element of trust. Like if you trust
Hmm.
a individual like Dick Barber, like you're gonna get quality because he's vouching for it. He really knows it. But at the same time, if you go to bring a trailer or whatever, there's this trust because all these people are
Hmm.
looking at it and verifying like, is this real? Is this good? So it
Hmm.
seems like that's a pretty healthy market. I think the only thing that's intimidating for me about that is the auction element. Like
Hmm.
I personally would be really intimidated like participating in auction for a car because
Hmm.
I have no idea how much it really should be worth. It just I feel like I'm gonna overpay or get caught up in this weird dynamic. I don't know if you guys what you guys think about that. Like, Troy, do you have a thought on the
Yeah.
online
Sure.
or
Sure. No, I think no, that's really good point you made, Carl. I think if you're bidding on cars, and Dr. Schutz, I'm sure you'll say the same thing, but just understanding the market, just make sure just make sure you understand exactly what you want, how much you want to pay for that car, and just understanding the market for the car, right? So I think if it's a very if it's a very rare spec or very desirable spec like Dr. Schutz's E92 M3, right? Then of course maybe you might be willing to pay a little bit more just so you can acquire that spec, right? But I think the big thing is just understanding what your own willingness to pay is for the car and exactly what you're looking for, and then just make sure you have your understanding of what the market is, right?
Well,
Sure.
we have new tools. For
Uh-huh.
example,
Uh-huh.
I know somebody who sells Anthropic.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
Anthropic AI, I have that. We all have some type of AI.
Uh-huh.
Have done this many times, and I get a good answer. Here's the question: how much should I pay for a 2011 911? And when I've done something like that, or how much should I pay for a 2016 BMW M3? And I put that in, and I tell you, the AI gives me a very good answer.
Mm-hmm.
They go to everything. Carl, you can talk about where they get their data. I can tell you it's accurate.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
funny
that's
because in this specific domain, I actually don't use AI because I have that AI, which is even more accurate. The human judgment still works, you know.
But
Mhm.
the answers I have gotten from Claude have been surprisingly accurate. And again, I do know the market, but the answers I get pull that information, pull the data from the different markets and give me a good
Mhm.
answer. Usually it's from bring a trailer and cars and bids, but they're good answers. So that's one more. This is a new tool, but again,
Mhm.
it's pretty accurate.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's definitely better than like Kelly Blue Book or however people would look up things in the past. Like
Yeah,
very helpful.
definitely,
Joy, do you guys use
definitely.
AI in your work at all, or
Oh yeah, it
like how
definitely.
do
So
you how?
so so especially we're setting prices for cars. Especially I think when it comes to pre-owned cars. So our goal is we want to be competitive. You want to make sure we price our cars competitively. So we want to be, I would say, like towards the lower end of the market range, because the thing is, because you have customers from the entire country shopping for these cars, and if your price is too high, they're not gonna, they're not going to call you, right? They're not going to buy from your dealership. So you do want to entice them to come look at the car that you have, right? You need to give them I would say, a reason to give you a call instead of a different dealer, right, for the car. And also, so I think when it comes to like real time pricing, it's really, really useful to see. And it's really interesting, Doctor, how you mentioned AI, because when it comes to customers, because most of them, they shop on their big classified websites, right? And that's how they get onto our website. That's how they find the cars in my inventory. And like when you go on Car Gurus, when you go on Auto Trader, like it shows you, like in Kelly Blue Book, Carfax, it shows you like what the price this car is listed at. Like it shows you, if it's priced high, or it's good deal, or great
Yeah.
price, right? Depending on what you listed the car at, right? So so the AI just analyzes the price of your car, like relative to other similar cars in the market
There
that
are
listed. So
limitations. I think Carl was
there.
alluding to basically,
Uh-huh.
the human element. So
Uh-huh.
I was searching for 997s
Uh-huh.
and it said, "Oh, this car is too expensive. This
Uh-huh.
is way overpriced." Well,
Uh-huh.
it was a GT3 3.8. It was a GT3. Of course, it's not a 99. I mean, it's a 997,
Sure.
but it's it was like $400,000, and it said this is overpriced by like 200,000 or $300,000.
Uh-huh.
The AI didn't know.
Uh-huh.
Well, I also think, Troy, you're calling out like predictive algorithms that set pricing based on all this
Mm-hmm.
data, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I actually think like generative AI is better if you're like, hey, I'm a new dad. I just moved into the suburbs. I have
Mm-hmm.
a daughter,
Mm-hmm.
like I plan on having more kids. Like I think if you give these kind of qualitative like situations, like what kind
Mm-hmm.
of car should I get? And Dad, I'm sure you've had a version of this
Yeah.
throughout your time as a car expert, and Joy, you probably as well. It's like describing the lifestyle, and actually, Joy, that's probably where you can get the biggest sales too, is if someone has a lifestyle problem that they want to solve, like
Mm-hmm.
versus like I want this model at this price, which is like the margin for like selling them
Mm-hmm.
a really nicer car is like very small because it's just order taking basically. But like I think
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to see. I mean, I know I'm not going to speak for my company officially, but I know like traditionally like Anthropic's like been anti-ads, for example, but like maybe
Mm-hmm.
like OpenAI is very pro ads. So it's going to be
Uh-huh.
interesting to see like if you ask this kind of neutral question, like the AI systems have to recommend something, right? But
Uh-huh.
it's like what's the element of taste and how can you maybe steer it accordingly based on your preferences? Like I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if I were to put in my situation, for example, last year, like I definitely would not have recommended a 997.1, So that's also kind of where the human judgment still comes in.
Of
But
course.
like, I think when I think about my next car, because at that point it was like, okay, I have a smart car, very impractical.
Mm-hmm.
997, also impractical, but like much nicer and it'll last forever, and
Mm-hmm.
it's truly a joy to drive. But
Mm-hmm.
like, I think what I'm thinking about more and more these days is like, I've got a smart car. I probably need to get rid of it. It's just sitting in the garage, and I don't know, like,
Mm-hmm.
when will I ever drive it again? I don't even know if it works anymore, to be honest. Like, but then, and the 997 is awesome, but only I can drive it, right?
Uh-huh.
Because my wife doesn't know how to drive stick shift,
Uh-huh.
and it's only a two-seater, so I can't put a car seat in it. So it's like, and then we've got this crossover Nissan Rogue, which is great. It's very reliable, but like, I think I'm probably gonna want like a car with a third row,
Mm.
right? And that's a whole new area. It's not like I'm looking for a Porsche, what type of model. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I don't know. I'd be curious how you guys approach those kind of open-ended questions. And Joy, do you see young people coming to you with those type? I mean, that's probably a
Yeah.
timeless situation, right? But
Yeah.
how do you guys look at these open-ended problems in the space?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Carl. And like you said, Carl, I agree that at the end of the day, humans, there has to be a human element to the equation, right? The human element, human has to be the one that has to make the decision. They have to be the ones that set the boundaries, and they have to be the one that makes the decision. Of course, AI can give you recommendations based on data, right? Based on, based on their machine learning from the data sets that they pulled. But I think at the end of the day, it's human beings that do have to make that decision, right? And then of course you have those, you do have a lot of those customers as well. They'll come in and exact same thing. You're like, hey, I have a family. I have two kids. I have two kids live in the suburbs. I'm looking for a commuter car, an SUV, just looking to see what might fit the best, right? And then just depending on what their needs are, you'll recommend them either the X3, X5, or X7 in the case of BMWs, right? Or even the X1, right? But I think for younger families, like small families, like those are okay. But maybe for the larger families or the ones who are planning for multiple children, they do like the X5, X7. But then at the end of the day, it's up to the customer, right? They have to drive those cars, see how they like them. I know some customers they think that they find the X7 to be a little too large, right? So they'll just stick with the X5. But if they need third row seats, right? Then they have to go with the X7 if they want a BMW. So of course, I think at the end of the day, that human aspect is very important. So at least just do all the research on whatnot. Leverage AI to help you with the research. I think when it comes to just kind of getting the boundaries of like what you should be looking for or what the price point is that you should be paying, but then I think when it comes to actually decision time, yeah, like look at it for yourself and make the decision for yourself on what is the best for you. And so
Mm.
that's yeah, what I would say.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
you use human and non-human tools to get you where you want to be. But again, I have been really impressed with Claude just asking any car question about how surprisingly good it is
Uh-huh.
at as you said, iterative, or no, you said generative.
Yeah.
But giving you information to kind of
Uh-huh.
help. I guarantee you, if you typed in, I'm gonna have kids, I need three
Uh-huh.
roads, give me options, it would say
Uh-huh.
something like, X7 to BMW, kind of BMW design, but also a little bit better driving dynamics. Mercedes GLS, a little bit more conservative, not quite as
Mhm.
good handling, not quite as athletic, that kind of thing. And I think that AI, I think, is surprisingly good in that area. But okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, my personal gripe with the third row cars is that all the good looking cars are only two rows. Like I really like the Ineos Grenadier as
Mhm.
like a poor man's G-Wagon, but like it only has two rows. And then, I like the Taycan a lot because it's really beautiful, but there's no third row. And, we'll see if Porsche, I was asking you today, is Porsche going to have a third row car? Because it's been in the works for some time, but we'll see.
And the G-Wagon, only two
Mhm.
rows. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
before we move on, Carl, do you have any funny customer stories?
I was thinking about that, and honestly, I don't have anything related to like a car thing,
No, no,
but
no, but just in general.
Yes.
yeah, I mean,
I remember your energetic meeting was one.
yeah, I mean, I think in B2B sales, I think Choi, like, it's probably, and even compared to like a doctor situation, like, you don't really deal with the general public. So that kind of screens out a lot of noise, which is good. But yeah, I mean, customers, they can have big egos, they can be really demanding, they can kind of try to bully you and stuff. So, just the other day, for example, I was talking with a senior leader at a company and we were discussing like the terms of an agreement and he basically described his company as like 30,000 idiots, and it's like
Oh,
Then
and
that's
it's kind of
that's
like
not good. Yeah.
how do you like respond to that? Because it's like
Uh-huh.
just the negotiating position is so awkward. Like if like it's like yeah, I don't really want to like negotiate that point, but you just hear crazy things. I think overall nothing too crazy. You get in all those crazy situations, but honestly, like having been in the space for like 10 years, like you kind of just like see it and move on. Like you kind of forget that there's all these crazy things, and honestly, a lot of times the details are so sensitive that you really can't share because
Mhm.
you could easily know like who it was, or you're going to disclose something that you shouldn't. So it's like a weird thing. Like a lot of times I can only really talk about it in that moment, like right afterwards with like some other close friends at that company, or maybe some close friends in the industry who get it, but like then you kind
Mhm.
of have to move on because it's not like it's so like I don't know, niche or whatever. It's hard to like
Sure.
tell crazy stories.
hey,
Sure.
Andy, let me ask
Yes.
you this
Yes.
in this way, and I'll
Uh-huh.
ask you too, Carl. So I'm 63. I'm a doctor, but I look like a doctor. So everyone just treats me fine. My patients always are great because they look at me like, okay, he looks like a doctor. But my younger partners, sometimes patients are nervous, like, boy, you haven't done this that long. Andy, have you seen that where you're young and maybe an older person, is worried about you or doesn't trust you because you're young? And Carl asked you the same question.
Oh, that's a great question. So for me, like most of the customers I've interacted with, they've been great. They've been fantastic. And I think for me, what's really helped was just be approachable and be friendly. I think that's the big thing, right? Just be approachable, just be friendly, and then just get to know the customer a little bit. Just build that level of trust, right? So for example, like I'll give you a quick example. So when it comes to BMWs, so some customers, this a lot of times like they want to. This has been kind of their dream car, like kind of car they've always to own at some point, and now they're in a position where they can. So they want to purchase the BMW, but then they're a little bit apprehensive because they hear, oh, like don't BMWs break easily, or aren't they a bit expensive to maintain? So like so when they ask you those questions, the thing is, just teach them teach them how to own a BMW reliably, right? So for example, like yeah, so with BMWs, so with customers, a lot of them they don't know is when you purchase a new BMW. So by default, all new BMWs they come with it's called BMW Ultimate Care. So for the first 3 years or 36,000 miles, all your scheduled maintenance is covered. It's complimentary. It's covered by BMW. Right, so all your oil changes and these kind of things, and
Wow.
then right, yeah, and then you have the 4 years or 50,000 miles vehicle warranty, right? So you have the warranty, and then the thing with BMWs is, so with Japanese cars, so I've owned a lot of Japanese cars. So when it comes to maintenance, I feel like they build in a little bit of, I'll say, like margin of error tolerance. So with Hondas, Toyotas, they tell you, okay, oil change every 7,000 miles. But if you do like 8,000 miles, it's the car's not going to throw a fit at you. But when it comes to German cars, I feel like when it comes to BMW, Mercedes, Audis, Volkswagens, if they tell you, okay, every 5,000 miles, full synthetic, every 5,000 miles, then you do your oil change at 5,000 miles, right? Just follow the strict maintenance plan. So as long as they're maintained, they seem to be fine, right? So just my thing is, just stick to the maintenance plan. Like, it's either, so either say, like, I think nowadays most of it is like, 10,000 miles or once a year, right? Just go ahead and stick to the plan. If you don't drive your car that much, just still get an oil change once a year. If you're at 10,000 miles, get your oil change at 10,000 miles. And the other thing is, let's say 5 years and past. So what BMW does is, so not every dealer does it, but there are a lot of participating dealers. So it's called BMW Value Service. So what you do is you just go on the website, you just Google the BMW Value Service. So it's operated by BMW and partner dealers. You put in your VIN, and then it gives you discounts on a lot of like wearable maintenance items. So these are offered for BMWs that are from 5 years to, I think, like 25 years old. So parts can be expensive, right? But then you get discounts on these. So if you need to do your brake rotors, pads, the brake pad sensor, or some of these things, right? They do have promotions for these. So a lot of times, and that includes parts and labor, and these actually come out to be cheaper than if you just buy the parts and do them yourself, right? So this is another cheap, a more cost-effective way to own a BMW. So when you have these knowledge, yes, like, you can maintain your BMW and drive it cost effectively, right? You can have a reliable BMW that you can maintain cost effectively. And then when customers ask, like, hey, don't these cars break down a lot, or aren't they expensive to maintain? You just tell them, hey, like, if you don't, so like, if no one tells you anything, they could be, but this is kind of your cheat code of how to maintain your BMW well, and then also how to, it's like how to get most life out of it, but also how to maintain it cost effectively. So when you give them these kind of information, they build a level of trust in you, right? And I think the other part is just be honest, right? Just be honest. It's always better to double check. And it's always better for me. It's been like, hey, let me check on that and get back to you. Or be like, I believe like this is it. Or I'll be like, yeah, I think this is right, but let me double check and get back to you. Or if you don't know it, be like, yeah, I don't know at this moment, but I apologize. But would it be okay? Let me check on this and get back to you. Right. I think that's been the big thing, right? Just don't ever guess, like, don't ever say something because you think that's what the customer wants to hear. Just double check there's some information if you need to, so that way you're relaying the correct information over to them. And I think that's been the biggest thing, right? Just make sure you build a level of trust with them, and just be very respectful to them. Just treat them very well, regardless of who they are. And
regardless of
yeah,
your age.
exactly, regardless of your age or your cultural background or what language you speak or anything like that. You just treat everybody the same. Just treat everybody with respect, and then just build that level of trust with the customers, right? And I think that's I feel like for me, like, that's what's really like worked really well. And just one last thing, I know I've talked a lot, but one last thing I did want to bring up was, Karl, that's one thing that you really taught me about sales. So the big thing when it comes to sales, I feel like, is, hey, just understand what the customer wants, and then just give them what they want. Right? That's the big thing, right? Yeah. So if the customer is asking you,
What a concept.
right, exactly. It's interesting, right? Like, what a concept, right? But I feel like that part gets missed a lot, and it looks like people who really pay attention to that, they're the ones who are successful, right? Just pay attention to the details, pay attention to what the customer wants, and just make sure that you are in prompt communication with the customer. So I think that's the big thing, right? So if they ask you about A, B, and C, like, hey, like, you look into A, B, and C, and you answer them about A, B, and C, right? Like, if they want A, B, and C, and you reply about X, Y, Z, like, they're never gonna buy from you, right? Like, so, like, you know what I
Carl,
mean?
talk about
Yeah.
that.
So,
Carl, talk about that because,
yeah.
Andy, look, a
Uh-huh.
lot of things, it's very simple, but
Uh-huh.
simple things are not always easy.
Uh-huh.
And I think a lot of times it gets missed because it's not easy and it's easy to miss it. But Carl, talk about that a little
Yeah.
bit
Yeah, absolutely. Karl, I'd
and,
love to
and
hear
your
from you
age.
too.
I mean, I think, well, it's kind of funny because we're not that young anymore either, to be
Uh-huh.
honest. But
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to say, like, just follow what the customer wants, but like sometimes the customer like at least with a car, like you drive a car every day, right? It's like very easy to understand what you might want in a car, for example. And you could
Mhm.
still be wrong potentially, or you could still maybe not know as much as like an expert, but like you at least have a way, it's like a pretty standard thing that people kind of know about, right? But like with new technologies, like it's, customers may want something, but they might be like completely off base. And
Mhm.
it's really hard to like steer them appropriately, you know, eh, when and you can't say like, hey, like you're just what you're describing makes no sense. You have to like obviously like approach them like you do want to try to just dig in and be like, what are you actually trying to do? Because like you want this thing, but it makes no sense. So like let's talk about what are you trying to do, and then try to steer the conversation from there. And I think it's really just about trying to be objective. And I think the in trying to be like credible. So like
Mhm.
if you're young or old, if you know the space really well and you can help the customer filter through all the like what's signal versus noise, I think that will ultimately give you that earn that trust versus like any sort of rapport building, like, oh, like, slapping them on the back, like, so good to see you. Like, I don't think that matters. I think it's because like if someone walks in the BMW lot, who's gonna know the space better than Andy Choi, you know? Or so I think that's what you can lean on, even if like it's the just the knowledge and the credibility.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's funny how a lot of times in life people think they know what they want, but they don't. Or like Carl said, they think they know what they want, but they're actually wrong. And then once you clarify, all of a sudden they realize, oh, I didn't really want that. I wanted something close, or
Mhm.
maybe not close, but they wanted something different. And that makes sense. Yeah, that's a good point.
Absolutely, and it's really cool. There's one thing I did want to add was, yeah, Carl, that's one thing that you did really well that I thought was really cool. I know Dr. Schutz, I'm sure you've heard stories about it too, but Carl's an expert at closing deals with Korean companies, with Korean customers, and that's like his specialty, right?
I
Just
didn't know that.
that, yeah, and it's really cool because it's like one thing that I learned too, where Carl was. I asked him one day, and I was like, "Hey, how are you so good at sales? Or like, what's your point of what's your advice on just killing it in sales, or like manage, or it's like managing sales or sales based roles?" And he was like, "Hey, what worked for him was he was like, hey, just like let's do what the customer wants, like and then just like either, yeah, and just like let them know like what's the best fit for them, right? Just like give customer like what they want, essentially. Just like listen to what their needs are, and then just make sure that like you provide a service or product that fits their needs, right? That was a big thing. And the other thing that I think Carl's done really well is kind of like finding a common ground with customers, or in a way like make himself memorable. So I know one story that Carl told me was like he was doing a deal with, was it Samsung or SK, so one of the largest Korean companies, and he was pitching his AI product, and there's these upper managers and VPs in the room, and half of them are kind of like, oh man, like I have so much work, but like I got dragged in here by my boss to like sit through this meeting, and he went with his technical manager, and the other guy, like he had no idea Carl spoke Korean, right? And then they were going around the room like introducing themselves, and Carl purposely went last, and then he did his introduction in Korean, and he said like the energy in the room just went from like, oh man, like another meeting, to just like, okay, wait, what's, oh, this is cool, like this guy's cool, right? Like let's listen to what he has to say. So I think that's been interesting, and that's like the one thing that I've tried to do with customers too. So for example, if a customer has a very like a unique last name, or I'll ask them, hey, how do you pronounce your last name? And they'll teach me how to pronounce their name. I'll be like, oh, that's very interesting. Like, oh, what's the country of origin of that name, if you don't mind me asking? And they'll be like, oh, it's Latvian. And I'll ask them like, that's cool, right? Like this, so did you grow up in Riga? Like, or are you from Riga? And he's like, I am. And he'll take a pause and be like, hold on, like, how do you know that, right? How did you know, like, and he will make a joke. He's like, hey, I don't think Americans were supposed to know like what Latvia is and stuff like this. But then like when you find those little connections, I think it does build that like another level of sort of like credibility, or that level of familiarity for the customers, and they're like, okay, like this guy seems cool, like, okay, I like working with this guy or whatnot, right? So it's cool. It's like some of these little tips I learned from Carl, and I just want to bring that up too, like his story with the Samsung. Yeah, so I think, yeah, those
Most
little things.
people, most
Yeah.
people think Latvia is a neighborhood in Chicago.
Right. But no, definitely those little things definitely go a long way for the customers when they decide, okay, like I want to work with this person, right? So like I want to learn more about this product, or like I do want to purchase from this company or this product, but I want to purchase like specifically from you, or I want to purchase specifically from Karl because this is a person that I really enjoyed dealing with, right? So
Yeah, it's
yes,
connection. I
yeah.
like that. Well, we're almost out of time. I'll let you guys finish with any closing thoughts if you have any. This was really fun. Like I said, this was kind of young car guy chronicles, but plus, and I love this. So, Andy, any closing
Yeah.
thoughts, and then we'll have Karl. Any closing thoughts?
So for me, I think in particular, but I did want to ask Karl two questions. I know Dr. Schutz, I know you want to ask the other one because this one of the questions about like like what car would you buy, right? If you can buy anything. So
Well, we'll
I would
close
love
with that. We'll let
what's
him.
that? Yeah, yeah, I would
Let's
love
do
to hear
that.
Carl's. Yeah, I would love Carl's
Because
thoughts on
what
that.
was your
Uh,
remind the
yeah.
audience what was yours? Money's no object, but it has to be a new car. What was yours?
Also for me, yeah, so for me it was a 911 GT3, right? And I remember you laughed because I was like, I love the 991.2 and 997, but I settled for a 992, and you were like,
Better.
settle for 992. Yeah, so but that'll be mine.
Yeah.
But yeah,
All
yeah,
right. So
yeah.
Karl, with that, you can close with that. What's the dream car? You're a new car guy, but what is it?
I don't know. I think recently I've been eyeing like a Taycan in
Oh,
Mason Blue.
Oh,
It would be like a fun family car to complement my 997.
so the Porsche electric car.
Yeah, it wouldn't be very exciting, but I think it'd be
I've driven
solid.
one. It's a great car.
Yeah,
I love driving it. It drives like an electric 911. It feels smaller than it is. It feels lighter than it is. It's very fast. It handles very well. I loved it. I didn't like the usual electric thing where range anxiety. I drove from Atlanta to Birmingham, Alabama, and
ah,
I had to slow down
mm,
toward the end and really kind of nurse it because I was worried about running out of electricity before I got to the hotel. But I loved driving it. That's a very Orange County car, and it's a very Carl car. Carl and
thank you.
Krista. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Mice and blue. Beautiful, not light blue. It's beautiful.
that's
All
cool.
right.
But Dr. Schutz, what about you? What about you? Let's hear yours too.
I said it was the GT3 SC, the convertible
Oh yeah.
GT3 with the manual transmission. So.
Mm.
All right. Well, we are out of time, so we're going to wrap it up. But guys, this was really great. And boy, I am just thrilled to have both of you. So thank you
Yeah,
so
thanks for
much for
having
being
us.
here. And
Yeah.
yeah, you're welcome. I'll channel Dr. Stephan Moran, who always says, like, listen, subscribe, hit the button, notifications, all that stuff. And Adams Hudson and Dr. Stephan Moran will be back soon. They're both dealing with some personal situations, and we will get them back soon.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, thanks again, Dr. Schutz. It's been a lot of fun.